Hello, welcome to the Career Discovery podcast. On the show today, we'll be learning about our guests' area of expertise, their career journey, and what they wish they'd known when they were just starting out. Thanks so much for watching. We really hope you enjoy the show. Edo, hello. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hello, Joe. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I'm really excited to learn more about what you do and your journey to this role. So yeah, before we go fully into it, how about you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for.
Yes. So I was born 33 years ago in Italy, and as you will learn probably from my accent throughout this conversation, and I currently live in London, in Clerkenwell to be precise, which is a neighborhood that I'm starting to love. The more I stay here, the more I love it. So it's a very nice area in London. I was born in Italy, in the south of Italy. I've been there till I was 18. And then I moved to Rome, where I started studying at uni. So I did my undergrad and graduate studies. And then 10 years ago, I moved to London to start working here in the financial industry. And at that time, it was a very good compromise because still wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And so that was a very good work experience that I did at the time, and then my career journey started there at Russell Investments, and then I know we're gonna chat more about the experiences I had, what I've learned, and hopefully some good tips for the people that are going to listen this podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And actually, on the topic of podcasts, this is a podcast. So are you a podcast lover? And if so, what are you listening to right now?
I am. And so there are a few that I listen to, and I'm definitely going to add this one to my list, because I look forward to hearing also what the other contributors had to say and learn from them. But there is probably a group of podcasts that are published on, it's an Italian channel, so it's called Radio 24. And so they have a bunch of podcasts on mainly Italian news. So I use podcasts to keep me, to stay updated with Italian news. So of course, living in London is not that easy. I mean, now it's much easier, with podcasts and websites and TV shows and everything. But I normally use podcasts to again, stay updated with the news. It's Radio 24 is more on the economic side, but they also basically deal with any important news in Italy on the political side, economic side, and anything interesting happening there. So
fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, right, let's get into your area of expertise. Now, I think there's many misconceptions about what we do in our roles, which is why I feel that this platform is important. So before we get into it, why don't you give us a sense of what your friends and family who are maybe outside of the industry, what do they think you're doing all day?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And I can confirm there are lots of misconceptions. So on my family side, I still think they don't really exactly know what I do. And normally, from time to time when I talk to them, they ask me, so how's your job at the bank going? Although I'm not really working for a bank, but somehow in Italy, if you work in the financial industry, you work for a bank. And the idea normally in Italy is that if you work for a bank, it's usually a commercial bank, so not even investment bank. And when I go back home, for Easter, for Christmas, they ask me, so tell me again, what exactly do you do on a daily basis? What are the projects you're working on? And I think that this is a sign, of course, of a bit of misconception about the industry as a whole. I think not so many people really know about, different players and what they do in the industry, and also how people can use the financial industry to achieve their investment goals. So I think there is still a big gap there. But I think it's probably true for any job, any industry, especially the new ones. So if you think about, jobs like content strategists, influencers, social media marketers, and so on. So I think it's really hard especially for previous generations, to think about these new jobs as a proper jobs and something that you can really make some good money out of them. And it's a very, very, very good businesses, and there are a lot of opportunities in these areas. So it's definitely something that I think that there is still quite a lot of misconceptions about. And also, on my friend's side, they know I work in finance, and they keep asking me in which stocks should I invest, although I'm not really an equity analyst, so I don't look at stocks on a daily basis. So I think, again, it's a sign that there is still a knowledge gap. And I think that's one of the things that also for us working in the industry, we need to make sure that people know also, know what they do and know what we do, but also know how to potentially leverage the financial industry to achieve their investment goals in the medium and long term. So still quite a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a great point. I think in the US, where people have to be perhaps more responsible for their own retirement planning than certainly than they do in the UK, where we have a pension, I think that maybe they're a little further along than we are. So it's definitely some catching up to do in terms of what jobs are available, but also what investment opportunities are available for everybody. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So I'd really love it if you could give us an overview of the investment management industry. I think that would be really helpful for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if even before looking at investment management, I think we can divide the financial industry mainly in two groups. So one is normally called the sell side, and one is called the buy side. So the sell side is basically, banks, investment banks that create or issue new securities or instruments. So for example, if you are a company that wants to raise capital, then you can either issue debt or equity, or list your equities on the stock exchange so that you can raise capital from the market. And so if you need to do so, then there are banks that can help you do that. And then on the other side, we have the buy side. So it's basically that part of the industry that is focused on buying those securities that were created by the sell side. And so, and then potentially, they put those securities into products that then are sold to people like me and you. And so think about, funds or ETFs that collect instruments, they collect equities, they collect bonds that were issued by some companies like Apple, Amazon, and so on, right? And so I think it's useful to think about these two areas. And then throughout my career, I've mainly been in the buy side, so the investment management side, if you will. And so working with companies that help clients build their own portfolios for retirement, as you were mentioning earlier, or any investment goal that they might have. And so potentially buying funds, buying ETFs, and so putting all of that together in order to create a portfolio that can help people achieve their goals. Now, of course, there are different players, in each side of the industry, but I think that's kind of a good summary in very few words.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, and in your current role, you're working in capital markets assumptions. So tell us what the purpose of that role is for your organization. What do the organization rely on you and your team to do in that role?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I have to say in few words, the job of somebody working in a capital market assumption team is basically to predict the future, which sounds very fancy, if you will, and of course it's very hard. So it's something that is needed in order to build portfolios at the end of the day. So people that want to invest again for their pension or for whatever goal they have, you need to have, in a way, a view on how much risk and return you can expect from certain products and asset classes that you're going to put together in your portfolio. So the role of the capital market assumptions is to basically build medium and long-term forecasts of the risk and return of various market segments. So if you think about, if you think about the whole market, then you can divide the whole market into different asset classes. So you have stocks and bonds, or you have different regions, equities and bonds in the US, or equities and bonds in the UK or Japan. And you can also have different sectors, right? You have different companies working in tech or healthcare or consumer staples and so on and so forth. So the role of our team is basically to come up with a view on what could be the risk associated to each of those segments and what could be the return that you can expect from each of those segments over the next, say, 5 to 10 years. And that, of course, it's very important, because then you're going to basically balance risk and returns in order to build a portfolio that is in line with your investment goals, but also, very importantly, with your profile of risk. So you don't want to take too much risk or too little risk, depending on how you feel about investing your money and potentially losing money in the future, or gaining potentially more money in the future. So I think it's a very important input for the whole portfolio construction process, which is basically building a portfolio, an investment portfolio for people.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I guess we've seen recently that politics can have an impact on these assumptions, with the mini budget in the UK. Can you give us a flavour of the other kind of key things that might impact these assumptions?
Yes, absolutely. So you touched on a very, very good point. So that's more about the fiscal policy, so how government acts and their policies in different countries and over time. But there is also something, it's probably related to also that one, but it's also the action of central banks. So they, of course, set the policy rates. So we have central banks in all the economies in the world, and each central bank could have a different policy. And so it's very important that we look at what they do and the expectation of what they could do in the future. Now, of course, one of the hot topics is around inflation. And so there is a lot of thinking, especially from central banks, on what they can do to alleviate that problem and to bring again the inflation rate down. And so that's another very important variable we look at. Another important variable is GDP growth, for example. So we look at different regions and see the prospect of future growth for each region. And then there are more kind of technical financial signals or variables that we look at, for example, valuations in the equity market. So, for example, when prices of stocks tend to be too high with respect to their fundamentals, then it's probably likely to expect a reversion over the next 5 to 10 years, for example. And then another financial variable is related to yields. So in a way, how much return can you expect from investing in bonds. And so that's a very good measure of understanding, again, the return you're going to experience over the medium and long term by investing in bonds. So it's a collection of measures. Some measures are more economic based, so inflation, GDP growth, the policy rate set by central banks. And then we also have some financial variables, again, like valuations, looking at the price of stocks, earnings of the companies we invest in, and bond yields on the fixed income side, for example.
Yeah, wow, a lot to look at.
Definitely, it's very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
World.
Yeah. All right. So zooming into an average day or week, what activities might we find you doing?
Yeah, so there is quite a lot going on. There is something more short term, something a bit longer on the longer term. So on the short term side, I think it's important for us to be up to speed with recent events. So as you were mentioning before, looking ahead at how governments act or central banks act, seeing how the economy is doing, and what could be, the expectations for the future. And again, that's very important, particularly now, right? So we hear a lot talking about inflation and potentially some recession coming in the next year or so. And also something else very important is to meet clients and meet people that invest in our funds, in our products, and really trying to help them navigate market uncertainty. So people want to know what we think, what might happen, and what they could expect out of their portfolio over the next years. And then, of course, there is also a more kind of research-based type of work that I do, and that's more a long-term thing. So we have quite a few long-term projects as we think about, how to model all those variables that I mentioned before. So there is quite a lot going on in terms of the econometrics of it, and so we're thinking about how to forecast those variables. How do you come up with views on, what the GDP growth is going to be over the next years, or valuations, or the yields on the bond side. So there is quite a lot also in terms of research, and this is the part of my job that is more, if you will, a bit more related towards the academic area. So there is a lot of academic work done on forecasting, on econometrics, on exactly how do you model those variables? How do you forecast those variables, right? Which is definitely not easy. So there is quite a huge literature of research around those topics, and so it's again, it's probably a mix of things that I have to do on a short-term basis. So, for example, a client that needs to know about more about our view on something, and there are more kind of long-term projects that I need to take care about.
All right. And are you using any special tools or programs to help you with this work?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a lot of data, definitely, and so we use lots of software to collect data. Sometimes it's not easy, especially for some emerging countries. For example, we don't have granular data as you would have, for example, for the US or some European countries. So there is a lot of we rely on a lot of softwares to download and to get the information that we need. But there is also softwares that we need to actually run all those computations that go behind the models that we leverage, right? So sometimes there are some quite complex and time-consuming processes that we need to run, and there is quite a large data set and quite a lot of information that we need to process in order to come up with a final view. And so, some of the things we use are MATLAB or something is becoming more and more popular is Python or R or this kind of statistical software that help us basically run this statistical analysis to forecast the variables that we care about. So all the ones that I mentioned earlier, GDP, and so on. So.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you. So if we zoom out a little bit, what might we find you doing less frequently throughout the quarter or year?
Well, yeah, definitely, less frequently is probably we have some quarterly meetings. There are different committees of people that need to decide, for example, on some portfolios that we manage. And so there are some quarterly or semi-annual meetings where we define the allocation for some of those products. These are portfolios that are built for the long term, so not necessarily something that for which you would change the allocation on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis. So it's more kind of long-term strategies. And then something else that happens on a annual basis, I'd say, is basically the review of the projects we're working on, and also these are meetings where we set which projects we want to work on in the next year. So that's usually something that happens towards the end of the year. So this is actually the time where we're starting to think about what are the themes that we think are going to be relevant for next year. And so how do we want to organize our time in order to, do research around those themes. And so it's, and that's more kind of a long-term and less frequent activity. Of course, if something big happens, in the market, in the economy, that would quite change the agenda quite significantly. But that's, we have seen that, for example, with the COVID crisis and all the things that happened over the last few years. I have to say, this is a very active time. There is a lot going on. So, of course, we always need to be a bit flexible. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. What do you love most about your job?
Well, I'd probably say, the fact that I can see directly how my job helps other people and how, it helps other people achieve their investment goals. Of course, in the financial industry, we don't save lives, but I think we can help people live better lives. The economic aspect of our life is still very important. And if you think about also all the mental health consequences that a very unstable economic situation might have on some people, you realize that that's very important. If you have enough capital, you can maybe go to some unis you like and do a certain career journey. And so I think the economic aspect is very important, and helping people managing their financial sphere and part of their life, I think makes me quite proud, and hopefully, I do it in a in a good way, in the best way I think I can. And I think it's important that but anybody in any industry never forget the fact that whenever we do something, we need to ask how is this going to help other people, because at the end that's I think that's the purpose of everything we should be doing, and see how whatever you do is applied to real life. How do you help society advance and create a better society for everyone? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think you make a really good point there. Sometimes when we talk about investment goals and investing, people who maybe didn't grow up with that maybe think that only applies to very wealthy individuals who are investing in, I don't know, tropical islands or yachts or jets or things like that. But as we touched on earlier, investing can and is for everybody. And it might be investing in something so you have enough money to send your kids to uni, or investing in your pension so that you can have a comfortable retirement. It's for everybody. It isn't just for those kind of big ticket items, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And again, we go back to some of the misconceptions, we were talking about earlier. Finance it's not just about, speculations. There are some people that speculate in the market, but, most of the people work to help other people achieve their investment goals. And as you were saying, like especially in Italy, and I see my friends, my family, there is this conviction that you can only invest if you have already a lot of money. So there is no point in investing if you don't have enough money, and that's wrong. And also sometimes people think that investing is too complex. It's really hard to understand, but actually it's not that hard. And so there is still a big knowledge gap that I think we need to fill. And you were mentioning probably in the US, it's a bit more common to invest, savings. Here in the UK, a little bit less, but still a good level of knowledge, although more can be done, but especially in continental Europe it's even less. And so I think over there again there is quite a big knowledge gap that hopefully we're going to fill in the next years.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, it can't all be brilliant. Edoardo, tell us about the challenges of the work. Challenges,
well, it's the work that I do. Again, when it comes to forecasting, it's quite hard. It's important. So on one hand, it's very hard, but on the other hand, I think it's important. You acknowledge those challenges, you acknowledge those difficulties, and you basically build the best input you can, given the information that we have today, and with a decent degree of uncertainty, if you have uncertainty around the forecast you're making. So I think whenever we do something, in my case it's about forecasting, but in any environment, I think it's important to know the challenges, to face the challenges, but also to talk about them also with clients. Talk about these challenges and the uncertainty you have in something that you are sharing with them, so that they can make an informed decision based on those information. Otherwise, it will become quite misleading and hard also for them to trust you in a way. So I think that's a good way of building trust also with the person you're talking to, you're working with. So I've found throughout my career that being open, especially about difficulties and challenges, it's extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes those are hard conversations to have, but better to be open and honest and upfront and transparent. It just means no surprises later, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that deep dive into what you're doing. Now, before we get into your journey from, student to where you are now, I'm really curious about childhood. When you were growing up in Italy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was young, I think there were different phases, of course, like everybody, from time to time you change your mind. But I think the main one was to become a policeman. And that's probably because I used to watch this TV show in Italy, and I loved it. And somehow I think I started loving, this kind of job from there, and probably fascinated by the uniform, or by the investigation that this policeman was doing around crimes and everything. And I don't know, I found it fascinating, and then of course I changed my mind, but but yeah, it's that was probably the one.
Yeah. Oh, and what made you change your mind?
I don't know. When I grew up, probably, I started uni, and I started to think about what I wanted to study and everything. And that's been another very tough time, to decide what to do at uni. It's been quite challenging. But then I was lucky to pick economics. And that was we were right in the middle of the global financial crisis. So talking about economic subjects and topics were everywhere in the newspapers. And so I became, more interested into these topics. I was reading newspapers, and so I wanted to learn more. And that's how then I started, thinking about doing economics as my undergrad.
Yeah. That was a crazy time. So you, so you studied economics, and was in Italy?
Exactly.
And was that a completely theory-based course, or did it involve some practical or internships?
Yes. So in Italy at the time, I'm not sure if it changed. Hopefully it changed a little bit, but there wasn't really the thing of doing internship. We didn't really have a gap year, for example, where you could go out and search for jobs and do some practical experiences. So I did my 3-year bachelor undergrad studies, and then 2-year master of science. And it was quite theoretical, I have to say, which, at the end of the day, it helped me build a very strong background, which probably doesn't mean that I learn everything, but I learn how to study, how to do research, and how to build on top of the knowledge that I developed during my studies. So it was quite theoretical, and in fact, my first job experience was after my master, and so I wish I had an experience during my studies. It would have probably helped me understand a bit better exactly what I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I was quite lucky to find my first job that was exactly what I was looking for. So that was very good. I was really lucky to have that opportunity. So
yeah. So tell us about that first job. Where what work were you doing, and was that as part of the move to London?
Exactly. So the funny thing is that I've never worked in Italy, or definitely until I graduated. So when I graduated, it was 2013. Then I graduated in July, and in July I actually started my first job in London. So it's been quite an experience, because, as you say, it was really my first important job I had, and so it was there was a lot of uncertainty. I really didn't know what to expect, and then of course mix it also with the excitement, but also the challenges related to moving to London, to another country, another city, quite a big city. And so it's been quite an experience, but I think that's the perfect time to do those type of experiences, right? And try different cities, finding new friends, and experiencing such a multicultural environment like we have in London. I think that's been really, really great. And I think my first job has been, very, very important. And I'm still very grateful to Vivek and Leola that gave me the opportunity to start working at Russell Investments, where we met. And that's been really, really a great great experience. You know, it was really my first experience in the industry. So I started to learn what finance is. And again, it's not just about banks, but there are different players. And I started, it's been the beginning of a long journey where I've learned many things. So
yeah, that's great. Is there anything you could share with us about the transition from Italy to London that might be helpful for audience members who also are going to be making such a move? Any lessons learned that might be helpful to share?
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to say. So it's very easy to say, but hard to do. But don't get stressed about moving. There are so many good things about moving to a different city, a different environment. Again, I've met wonderful people, and I've met so many friends, and actually now I have probably more friends here than in Italy, and that's you know, it's good and bad. Of course, you know, you miss your friends, you miss your family, but when you move to a different environment, I think there are so many good things related to it that I can only recommend it. And also, you know, throughout my studies, I did an Erasmus experience, and that really helped me, you know, talk to people I would have never talked to before, like, and getting to know different cultures. And that's something that is very useful also when you move into the job market. You know, these kind of soft skills that you need to develop are extremely important. You start learning how to, you know, work in teams, how to get to know and work with people with different cultures, with different backgrounds. And so I think that's one of the best parts of traveling in general. But if you travel for work and you have to spend 6 months plus in a given country, then you really start understanding the culture of that country. And especially in a city like London, you find so many different cultures here that it's just amazing. So
yeah. And for those that don't know, the Erasmus experience, is that a study abroad opportunity?
Exactly. It's a European project, so you get to spend from 3 months to 1 year in a university abroad, in any other European country. And so it's you basically take exams in a different language and in a different university, but they then, when you go back, they basically recognize all the progress you have made, so that you don't basically waste time in your studying journey, basically.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a really great experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in the capital markets team at Russell, and then what happens next?
Yes, so I did one 1 year internship, and I got to again learn so many great things. And then after that experience, that really was an opening in the team at that time. So I started looking for other jobs as well. And I got a job at Deutsche Bank. And for that job, I had to move to Germany, which I had never been before. So that was another quite a nice life experience before than the work experience. And that's probably work experience that I've never really enjoyed that much. So after probably 6 months, I realized I didn't like the job. And so I basically decided then to start applying again for jobs. And I really wanted to come back to London. So I was missing the city. I was missing the environment. And there is this thing that they now call the fear of missing out. And I think that also was kind of a feeling I was I was having at that time. Although, I was in Berlin and then Frankfurt, so it was, great cities, great environments, but somehow departing from London was something that kind of, I don't know, shocked me in a way. So I wanted to come back. And so after a year over there, then I was lucky enough to come back again to Russell Investments, because at that time there was a new opportunity. And so I was lucky enough to get a job and come back to London. And then I've spent another 2 years at the company. And then after 2 years, then I moved to Vanguard. And at Vanguard, I've spent 5 years, again, doing the type of work I was describing earlier. And actually, a few months ago, then I moved to Fidelis International. So I'm really at the beginning of my new experience.
Your new experience. And you touched on, I think, something really important there. You when you went to Deutsche Bank in Germany, it sounds as though you still kept in touch with people at Russell, and I think that's a really great thing to do. And it's really important, of course, not to burn bridges when you leave an employer. But if you can leave on great terms and keep in touch with those people that you worked with, keep the network alive, you never know what might be down the road for you. And so I think that's, it's great that you're able to do that.
Exactly. I think that's very important. And sometimes, you don't find the opportunity there at that specific point in time, but that doesn't mean that they don't like you, or they don't want to hire you, but it's just that there is no opportunity at the time. But that doesn't mean that the opportunity is not going to arise in the future. And so it's always good to keep in touch with people in good terms, and also because when you work, then of course you spend a lot of time with other people and you start building connections, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that those connections need to help you find a job necessarily, but also in terms of personal connection, I think it's really important to keep in touch with them. You'll probably find very good friends at work, as I did, for example. and so both ways, I think it's very important to keep that connection.
Yeah. And something else that you talked about, the move to Germany and to Deutsche Bank, and you quickly realized it wasn't a great match. And I think sometimes that takes courage to listen to that, those feelings, and to act on them. I can imagine it would have been very easy to think, okay, well, I'm here now. It's probably best if I stay for at least 2 years, so it looks great on my CV. But actually, that could have led to you feeling very unhappy, very unfulfilled. And actually, I just think if of course, give things a chance. But if you really, really know, then I think it is good to listen to those feelings and take action.
Absolutely. And you touched on a very good point, because that was exactly the feeling I had at the time when I said, I don't like this job as much as I thought. But now, if I move now, after just 1 year, then what are people going to think about this? Are they going to think that I'm just jumping from job to job? But I think the important thing is that you need to have a coherent story to tell people. So just explain why you have done what you've done. And there is no problem at all in explaining, I started this job. I didn't like this job because of A, B, and C. And so that's why I'm looking for another job at the moment. So there is nothing wrong about that. And there is nobody, that is really keen on counting how many years have you spent there. And if you have spent less than X number of years, that they're not going to consider your application. That's not how it works. So it's all about, having a story to tell to people. And also the other thing I would mention is that even when you do something that you don't like, what I've realized is that there is always something to learn. something to learn about you, because maybe you realize you don't like something, you want to do something else. But also in terms of skills, I've learned quite a few skills there, interpersonal skills, for example, but also some technical skills that then I have used in my future experiences. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to do something you don't like for a given period. But then, of course, it's important that you realize that, you acknowledge that, and you do everything you can to move on.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes we can feel that if we made the wrong move, we've gone backwards. But actually, we're always moving forwards. We just might need to course correct, and that's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I know that you've been doing some additional studies since you completed your master's recently. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So a few years ago, in 2019, so just before the pandemic, then I started my part-time PhD, still in finance, so very relevant to what I'm doing. And so far it's been a great experience, very tough to balance part-time PhD with a full-time job and then of course my personal life. But I've learned a lot also, and I'm learning a lot from this experience too. And I think the good thing is that I'm doing research on something that is very much in line with what I do at work on a daily basis. So I almost don't feel a gap between the two things. And that's probably the way to survive to this kind of, to the pressure in a way you have from both sides and the workload. Because of course, doing a PhD and working full time, it's quite demanding, and terms of time, energy you have to put into it. And then, of course, as you were mentioning, it's really important also to take some time off, rest a bit, recharge your batteries, because it's you can't run all the time, and so you need to find some time for yourself as well. So that's it's quite a nice experience. But I would suggest other people do that, but of course keep in mind that it's quite demanding.
Yeah. Importance of self-care. You can't fill from an empty cup.
Exactly.
Pour from an
exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember the expression, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you look back on this journey from, student, not really knowing what you were going to do, to where you are now in the role, looking back on that journey, what would you call out as the things that went well or were relatively smooth, or the challenges that you might have had to overcome along the way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, probably the best part is that, again, I was lucky enough to get a job, my first job, that was exactly what I needed at that time. Because when I completed my master, I still wasn't sure whether I wanted to go for like the academic route or started working in the industry. And the job that I got at that time was really a nice compromise, a nice match, because it was a mix of the two things. So I was basically doing research, robust research, but in the industry. So working for an asset manager. So I think that was something that looking back, I'm really happy about. And I'm very grateful for the experience and the opportunity that I was given at the time. And the challenging part, again, was probably about the job that I didn't like. And we have touched on that. But also my first job interview, which was a complete disaster. And I still remember that experience. But I've learned a lot also from that experience. Of course, it didn't went well. I didn't get the job. But that was the beginning where I started to say, all right, I need to learn how to do job interviews. I need to learn how to tell other people what I've learned and what I want to do with all the things I've learned. And one of the things is that I didn't prepare that well. So it was just before some big exams I had to take. So I didn't really have the time to do lots of reading about the company and the role itself. So I was quite unprepared, and it was in English, which at that time I wasn't really fluent in English. So it was quite a challenge at the time. And so again, it was a disaster, but it was a disaster in terms of the outcome of that interview. But I think it was a great experience, because from there, then I started doing, more research, understanding what I really wanted to do, and also learn how to write CVs and how to do job interviews.
Yeah.
And so, so that was the beginning of everything for me. So I'm glad that experience didn't go well.
Yeah, and great point. You had a failure and you learned from it, and actually, I don't know, you could be the best economist in the world, for example, but if you can't articulate why you're good at what you do and what value you'll bring to the organization, then it will be really hard for them to hire you. So it definitely is a set of skills that you need to learn when you're researching and applying for jobs. And there's tons of amazing other podcasts out there, and as well as blogs and so on, that where lots of information is available on those topics. And but
just to add the importance of communication skills. That's something I have learned over the last few years. And at the beginning, I was thinking that your technical knowledge is way more important than your communication skills. But actually, I would say they are at least 50-50 in terms of importance, because as you were saying, if you do something, if you're good at doing something, but you can't really explain other people what you've done or how they can use what you've done, it's basically useless. You're not going to make anything out of it. So I think improving communication skills is definitely something that I would suggest anybody. And there are some people that are really good at communicating just by nature, like they find it very easy. I wasn't really one of them, so I had to train and do do my own exercises and which involved also doing as many interviews as possible, right? So so building my communication skills by doing interviews, by working, and also at work in the companies I've worked for, I also took some courses on how to improve presentation skills and communication skills. So, and especially, now in these centuries, I think it's being able to communicate effectively is becoming more and more important. So definitely something to look at.
Yeah. Great advice. Are you able to talk to us about the importance of role models and mentors, and in the role they've had on your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was mentioning before, I've been quite lucky for the fact I've met so many good people, good friends throughout my experiences. And what I've found helpful is that these are the people that help you make the right decision. Most of the time, at least my experience, but most of the time, I don't think I would have been able to actually make the decision that, looking back, I can say, okay, that was the right decision without talking to other people. So I think finding good friends, good mentors at work, but in anything you do, even at school, I think it's extremely important, because those are the people that help you grow, and help you understand also what you want to do. Just talking to other people, then you kind of talk about your goals, and by talking, I feel I start realizing exactly what I want to do. So when I start explaining these things to other people, then somehow I learn a lot. And so finding these people in any environment you're in, I think it's extremely important. And there are, some, I think there are, I don't know if I can define it like a direct and indirect mentors or role models. So it might be people that you know directly, but also people that you don't really know, but you see how they act. And so you find an inspiration from them. Again, probably my previous experience, the founder of that company has been such a disruptor in the industry, and think about, has really helped me look at finance in a very different way. We were talking about stereotypes earlier. I think finding these type of role models can help you see things that you were not seeing before. And I think that's a very, very important thing, and that helps you and helped me a lot. So
yeah. I think you make a great point. I think there's a lot of pressure on people to, I guess, find formal role models and mentors, and that might not be available to everybody, but you can look to people in the industry that you're excited about, or the types of jobs that you're excited about, and you can study them basically, and you you learn from them and be inspired by them, and be inspired by their journey, but also, like you say, by observing how they act and behave, it can inspire you to perhaps act and behave in those ways too, and learn. I think that's really, really great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so for somebody who's thinking they might like to work in capital market assumptions, what would you say would be either necessary or helpful education or training that they should think about, going for?
Yes. So I'd say probably, I'm thinking about what I do again on a daily basis. And I think being good with numbers is definitely a good skill to have. And I was, again, lucky that I studied econometrics a lot. So meaning applying statistics to some economic problems. And so I've always liked, applied mathematics, applied statistics. And so how can you use math and statistics to solve some, real life problems? For example, define the risk of your portfolio, understanding what you could potentially expect out of a given economy that you are analyzing. And so there is a lot of, there's a big part of my job that is around running computations. And so having a background that is, that has good mathematical skills, I think it's very important. And the other part of my job is probably around coding. So knowing a little bit how to code. You don't need to be, software engineer or computer scientist to do this type of job, but you need to know how to process, large amounts of data, how to run regression analysis, how to compute some statistics that you're going to use to estimate the risk of your portfolio, for example. So this statistical software, as I was mentioning earlier, like MATLAB or Python or R, are very helpful to do that. They are very key. They're very, very important for a job in the capital market assumption area. So I think that those would be the ones I would probably put on top of of the list. But then, of
All
course,
right.
don't forget, as we were saying before, like all the soft skills. This job can be very technical, but if you can't explain that what you have done to other people, then it's kind of useless. So make sure you build your skills, looking at very different skills. So I know it's not easy, but with time, I think people can do that.
Yeah. Thank you. And on the subject of soft skills, we've talked about communication and the importance of that. What other soft skills would you say are important for somebody that wants to work in your field?
Yeah, I'd probably say being able to work with other people. It sounds very obvious and easy, but I can assure you that it's not that obvious. And so it's very important you have skills that can help you interact with different people, understanding when in a conversation, how to have a conversation with other people without sounding too having maybe like a constructive conversation with people, working in a team, understanding what your role is, how can you help other people achieve the goal that you all have in mind. I think that's extremely important, and that's something that's it's very important for my role, but I'd say probably for any role in any industry. Like whenever you have strong interpersonal skills, I think that's a great value add. In fact, even when I did interviews, but also when I interview people to hire in the teams I work for, then the interpersonal skills are very, very important. So knowing math really well, or science really well, or a given subject is definitely not enough. If a company hires you, it's also because you need to work with other people, and you need to work effectively with other people. And so interpersonal skills are super important.
Yeah, absolutely. So communication, collaboration, and I expect that in the work that you're doing, you might have a view on something and you might think it's the right view, but you've got to listen to the rest of your team and your leader. And I guess the work you do is complementary to some of the other teams that might be forming that view. And so it's knowing listening to other people and their views, and knowing that your view might not always be the one, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, it's probably rare to find situations in which you are going to be the only one to make a decision.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to be the one to make the final decision, but that final decision is the result of a long process that involved, listening to many other people, listening to many other views that might be very different from yours. And so it's quite, sometimes it can be a complex and quite articulated process, but absolutely. I mean, talking to other people, understanding what they think is extremely important. And if you think you're making a decision just on your own, there is probably something wrong. I would definitely suggest to, before making, especially an important decision, trying to talk to as many people as possible, because they're going to, give you some perspectives or some information that you weren't really aware or you weren't thinking about before. So,
yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that guidance, because I think that is really helpful. Especially in these roles that are very technical. Okay, tell us what the future holds for capital markets. I'm guessing it's a really exciting time.
It is, and that's a very tough question. But I have to say, so related to what we were talking about before, And I'm probably focusing more on the financial industry, but of course that has a lot of implication also for the job that I do. But again, there is this big gap in access to finance, and also all the communication around financial opportunities for people. Again, as we said earlier, investments are still probably seen as quite a elitarian thing, just for few people, very complex, just to speculate, or only for men, so there is still quite a lot of misconceptions there that I think over the next few years, hopefully, it's going to improve, and I think that's going to be quite a disruption for the industry, because it's going to open the doors to and give opportunities to so many other people that are not in the industry today, or do not leverage the industry at full potential. Yeah. Then there is another area probably on technological innovation. By simply looking, for example, at what banks or management companies were doing 20 years ago, or if you look at pictures of a trading floor 20 years ago, it's very different to trading floor today, and that's probably true for pretty much any industry, right? So I think that there is a lot going on in terms of technological innovation. And particularly in finance, the role of blockchain and how the role of intermediaries, so the role of banks in the industry might change quite significantly in the future. So I think that's something definitely to look at. I don't know, of course, what's going to happen, but there is a lot going on there that is going to drive a lot of change in the industry. And then probably the third one, which is probably equally important to all the others I mentioned, is around financial regulation. So changes in financial regulations to fight climate change. And I think on this topic, I believe it's probably common knowledge, but that the financial industry needs to, of course, contribute to this transition towards a greener world, greener society, greener economy, and so we all are going to play a big role there, and so I think there is going to be quite a lot of drastic changes there. So I think we still haven't seen the very tight regulation that might come over the next few years, coming from governments or regulators in the industry. So I think that's another very interesting area to look at, and especially if you want to, for people that want to start their studies around sustainable finance, ESG investing, I think that's a great area to focus on at the moment. So,
yeah, thank you. For people who may be interested in finding out a bit more about this field, where would you direct them?
Yes, so the capital market assumption side is quite specific, but there are, for example, papers of reports that investment managers and investment banks publish every year, usually at the end of the year. They're normally called economic outlook papers. So each of course investment management company or bank has its own name. But even if you simply Google capital market assumption or economic outlook paper, then you'll find the material I'm talking about. And probably something else also, what I found useful years ago, I think it's still quite useful. Maybe you can confirm that, Joe, but eFinancial Career, the website, there are lots of opportunities out there, and also LinkedIn, to find jobs, but also spend time looking at the job description, because the job description can tell you a lot about what companies do, what a given team is working on, and also the skills that they look for. And so that I think from time to time, even if I'm not looking for jobs, I just look at some job offers just to see, also other companies, what are they doing? What do they look for in a candidate? What type of skills they're looking for? So it's a good way of keeping you updated on what the market is looking for.
Yeah, I think that's a really great tip. And for anybody who is not familiar, if you just type, I don't know, capital markets into the search bar in LinkedIn, it then gives you various options. And if you choose jobs, there'll be hundreds, if not thousands, of job profiles that you can look at. And it's just so helpful just to get a sense of, okay, what would I be doing? Does that sound like the kind of thing I'd want to be doing, the type of thing I could do well in? And then, look at those requirements. And like you say, if there are certain essential requirements, you can try and build that into, your study plan. Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Great tips. Thank you. Okay, Edoardo, as we move towards wrapping up, I'd love to know what you wish you'd known when you were just starting out that you know now.
Yeah, probably I'd say I wish I had known that there is always something positive in everything you do, even in failures, as we mentioned earlier. So whatever, good or bad experience you have, there is something to learn, and that's very easy to say. But then when you are in that situation, of course, maybe you're stressed about that failure or something didn't go well. But I can assure you that, after a few months or after a few years, you're going to look back and say, you know what, that was a bad experience, but I've learned so many good things that it actually turned out to be a useful experience. I don't want to say good experience if it was a bad experience, but at least I think all experiences are useful to learn something.
Yeah, look for the lessons.
Yeah.
And what would you say to that young Edoardo who wanted to be a policeman?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of things can happen on the personal side and, on the work side. So life in general, there is so much going on. But it's always good to, share the journey with other people. I think that's the best thing you can do. I think we are made to live with other people, to have experiences with other people, good friends and family members. And so I think, so spend time, being with friends, finding friends, meeting friends and family.
Yeah.
And because that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really, really great advice. Edoardo, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic. Is there anything that it's been great? Is there any final words of wisdom or encouragement that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I'd probably say, and hopefully that was clear, throughout our conversation. But I'd say never forget that there are many opportunities out there, even when you think that there is nothing or there is no hope. When you're stuck in your career, just try to talk to as many people as possible. Again, in the industry or other industries, there are so many opportunities that you can take that, you'll be surprised. And if you talk to other people as much as possible, I think you're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to find new opportunities. And so, again, it's a work in progress. In any phase of your life or your career it's always a work in progress. So share that with other people and talk to as many people as possible. Also to learn new things. I'm learning so many things over the last months and years that I've never imagined before. So yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. If you gained any value out of today's episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, we would love your feedback. Please use the links in the show notes to get in touch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.